Hello and welcome back to AP Psychology. I'm Miss Lee, and in this video we're starting a new unit, Unit 5, Cognitive Psychology. The first section is an introduction to memory. We have quite a few learning targets because this is a large unit. Go ahead and pause the video for just a few moments to take a look over our list of learning targets. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and grab your notes and let's get started. Hello, I'm your memory. Because of me, you know who your friends are, the English language, your favorite song, and yourself. Memory is any indication that learning has persisted over time. It is our ability to store and retrieve information. So what I want you to do is grab a piece of paper and tell me your memories. Write down all the things that come to mind when you hear the word yellow. What did you do on your last birthday? Describe the events that occurred the last time you went to a restaurant. And who is this character? One idea leads to another. It's similar to a stream of consciousness or the spread of activation. In this memory, you reconstructed the memory of what happened before you told it. We all have unique memories because of our unique life experiences. These are episodic memories. But we also have similar memories or understanding, which are semantic memories. This is a huge unit with lots of vocabulary. It's critical that you understand the terms as best you can the very first time. So make them meaningful by thinking of examples and how they relate to the terms. The first term is flashbulb memory. In a flashbulb memory, a unique and highly emotional moment can give rise to very clear, strong, and persistent memories called flashbulb memories. This memory, however, is not free from errors. In the picture that is on your screen, you see a picture of the Twin Towers following the attack on 9/11. A lot of people have very strong flashbulb memories of that day. If you were around, you know exactly where you were when you heard the news. But interestingly enough, a lot of those memories do have some error in them. Like I said, they are not free from errors. So sometimes our memories aren't quite accurate. So we talk about memory as in stages. So we will have 3 different videos that will cover each of these stages: encoding, storage, and retrieval. And I want you to think about it as a sequential process. One leads to the next to the next. It's very rare that any of these stages are bypassed. It does happen, however. And you can think of this in terms of a computer. Encoding is typing in the information. If you're writing a paper, if you are doing an activity on your screen, as you type or as you click, you are encoding, you are putting information into the system. When you use a flash drive, you are storing it. You are putting it somewhere for safekeeping. That information is going to be held for a while until you need it again. And that's called retrieval. So when you're able to access the information from where it is stored in your memory after you encode it. A 3-stage processing model of memory was introduced back in 1968 from Atkinson and Shiffrin. This model is a 3-stage model that includes sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. So basically, here's how this goes. You have some type of an external event, and that event is going to input sensory information, which causes an immediate sensory memory. You are paying attention to it because it is either important or it's novel, it's new. And so that information is then placed into your working or short-term memory. If you don't pay attention to it, it does not move on to that next step. It is just lost. From the working or the short-term memory, the information is encoded into long-term memory, and then you can retrieve it and use it again as a working memory. So let's talk about each of these steps in a little bit more detail. So sensory memory is the initial momentary storage of information. It only lasts a second or two, and we use our senses to take in the information from the world. So it's anything to do with our senses, and it allows us to take in all of the information and decide if it's important enough for us to pay attention to. If it's not, it's just lost forever. It's decayed, it's displaced. So think of sensory memory like a snapshot. The snapshot that is constantly replaced with new snapshots unless it's paid attention to, and at that point it's transferred into short-term memory. If you have ever played with sparklers and you are spelling out words, The sparklers don't actually make the letter, but your sensory memory is quick enough to where it is going to put the letters together in one collective piece so that you are able to see those letters. The next step is short-term memory. This is memory that holds meaningful information for a very short period of time. It's longer than sensory memory, but it's usually less than 30 seconds. There's a limited capacity of about 7 items, give or take 2. So somewhere between 5 and 9 items can be remembered. And you can store more information if it's chunked or grouped together. So here is an example of what that would be. The first line of letters is just a jumbled mess of gobbledygoo. You can't really make heads or tails of it, and there's no way that you would remember it. However, you are much more likely to remember these as TV stations: PBS, Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS, MTV, and NBC. Because that's 7 stations and not 21 letters, you have a much greater likelihood of remembering this list of letters as chunked information rather than individual pieces of information. The information will, however, leave your short-term memory if it's not rehearsed. So think about how you would have to repeat that information or rehearse that information. So I know most people have a cell phone, but let's say you don't happen to have your cell phone with you and somebody tries to give you a phone number. You would have to keep repeating it over and over until you dial the phone number. But if you don't do that, you're going to forget it. If you have ever tried to look for an address, if you've ever tried to look for a classroom number, you have to keep repeating it over and over again or you're going to forget it. Well, that's short-term memory. Rehearsal will keep information in short-term memory, but it's still necessary for that information to be transferred to long-term memory in a different way. So the next step is long-term memory. This is memory that stores information on a relatively permanent basis, and we don't really think that there is a limit to the capacity of long-term memory. It's all about how things are encoded and stored in order for us to be able to retrieve it later on. So however your information is filed and coded, that's going to affect how you're then able to later retrieve the information when it's needed. Okay, so there are some problems with this 3-step model. First of all, some information does skip the first 2 stages and go straight into long-term memory automatically. How does that happen if it's supposed to go through sensory and short-term memory? Since we can't focus on all the sensory information in the environment, we select information through attention, we've talked about this before, that's important to us. This process is known as selective attention. The last problem is the nature of short-term memory is more complex than this model gives it credit for. So back in 2002, a researcher, Alan Baddeley, proposed a new theory about working memory. And basically what he stated was that it acts as an active workspace where information is retrieved and manipulated and maintained through rehearsal instead of simpler short-term memory described earlier. So it's basically a central executive that contains auditory and visual processing. It helps us to make decisions and reason. It allows for us to briefly maintain the information in an active state so that we can do something with the information later on. So that is it for our introduction to memory. In our next video, we're going to talk about encoding. I can't wait to see you then. Bye for now.